The rain fell in heavy sheets across the empty highway, turning the autumn evening into a blur of headlights and uncertainty. Rebecca Walsh sat behind the wheel of her luxury sedan, her hands trembling as she pulled onto the shoulder of the road. The engine had been making strange noises for the past 10 miles, and now it had finally given up completely. At 35, Rebecca had built her life around control and success. As the chief executive of Walsh Technologies, she commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions with confidence. But tonight, soaked to the skin in her elegant beige dress, she felt more vulnerable than she had in years. Her 5-year-old daughter, Emma, sat quietly in the back seat, clutching her worn teddy bear and watching her mother with concerned blue eyes. Emma had been unusually quiet during their drive from the courthouse, sensing that something important had happened, even though she was too young to understand the legal proceedings that had just concluded. "Mama, why did the car stop?" Emma asked softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of rain against the windows. Rebecca turned to look at her daughter, trying to keep her voice steady. "The car is having some trouble, sweetheart. We will figure it out." But inside, Rebecca felt her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The court ruling that afternoon had been devastating. Her business partner had successfully sued her for control of the company she had spent 8 years building. Her assets were frozen, her reputation was in ruins, and she was facing bankruptcy. The luxury car they sat in would likely be repossessed within the week. As if responding to her thoughts, headlights appeared through the rain behind them. A pickup truck pulled over and Rebecca watched nervously as a man stepped out into the downpour. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing work clothes that were quickly becoming soaked. Despite the weather, he moved with unhurried confidence toward their car. Rebecca rolled down her window partway as the man approached. Rain droplets scattered across her face as she looked up at him. "Good evening," the man said, his voice warm despite the cold rain. "I am Jake Morrison. I saw you pulled over and thought you might need some help." At 38, Jake had the weathered hands of someone who worked with tools and engines every day. His brown hair was darkened by the rain, but his eyes held a kindness that immediately put Rebecca at ease. "I am Rebecca," she replied, trying to maintain some dignity despite her circumstances. "The engine just stopped running. I am not sure what happened." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Would you mind if I take a look under the hood? Sometimes these things are simpler than they seem." Rebecca hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She had no other options, and something about Jake's calm demeanor made her trust him. As Jake lifted the hood and began examining the engine with a small flashlight, Emma leaned forward in her seat. "Mama, is that man going to fix our car?" "I hope so, sweetheart," Rebecca replied, watching Jake work with practice efficiency. After several minutes, Jake returned to her window, rain dripping from his jacket. "The good news is that it is not anything too serious. Looks like your alternator belt snapped. The bad news is that you will need a tow to get it fixed properly." Rebecca felt her heart sink. She did not have money for expensive repairs, and she certainly could not afford a tow truck. The reality of her situation began to overwhelm her, and she felt tears mixing with the raindrops on her cheeks. "I understand," she managed to say. "Thank you for checking." Jake noticed the change in her voice and leaned down slightly. "Are you all right?" That simple question, asked with such genuine concern, broke through the wall Rebecca had been building around her emotions all day. The tears came freely now, and she found herself speaking words she had not intended to share. "I lost everything today," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My company, my home, my future, everything I worked for is gone." Emma, hearing her mother cry, unbuckled her seat belt and climbed into the front seat. She wrapped her small arms around Rebecca's shoulders, offering comfort in the way that only children can. Jake stood quietly in the rain for a moment, taking in the scene before him. He saw a woman who had clearly faced a devastating day and a little girl who was trying to take care of her mother with pure unconditional love. Jake said gently, "May I say something?" Rebecca looked up at him. Through her tears, nodding. Jake's voice was soft but certain. "You still have her." He gestured toward Emma, who was now stroking her mother's hair with tiny, comforting hands. "And from what I can see, she still has you. That is not nothing. That is everything." Rebecca felt something shift inside her chest. This stranger, This kind man who had stopped to help them in the rain, had just reminded her of the one truth she had lost sight of during her darkest day. "You are right," she said quietly, holding Emma closer. "You are absolutely right." Jake smiled gently. "I tell you what, I have a tow truck back at my garage and I keep a few alternator belts in stock. Why don't I give you and your daughter a ride to somewhere warm and dry and we can get your car sorted out in the morning?" "No charge." Rebecca started to protest, but Jake held up his hand. "My grandmother always taught me that kindness is like a circle. When someone helps you, you pass it on to someone else. Tonight, let me help you. Someday, when you are back on your feet, you can help someone else." 20 minutes later, Rebecca and Emma sat in the warmth of Jake's small garage office, sharing hot chocolate from a thermos while Jake called his tow truck driver. Emma had fallen asleep on the small couch, her teddy bear tucked under her chin, finally peaceful after the long, difficult day. "Jake," Rebecca said as they waited, "I do not know how to thank you. Today has been the worst day of my life, but your kindness has reminded me of what truly matters." Jake looked over at sleeping Emma, then back at Rebecca. "I lost my own family in a car accident 3 years ago. My wife and daughter. It taught me that the love we have with the people who matter most is the only thing that really counts. Everything else can be rebuilt." Rebecca felt her heart break for this man who had suffered such unimaginable loss yet still found the strength to help others. "I am so sorry, Jake. How do you find the courage to keep going?" "Same way you will," Jake replied simply. "One day at a time, focusing on what we still have instead of what we have lost. You have a beautiful daughter who loves you completely. That is a foundation you can build anything on." Over the following months, Rebecca discovered that Jake was right. Losing her company had been devastating, but it had also freed her to reconsider what she truly wanted from life. She found work as a consultant, helping other small businesses grow and succeed. The work paid less than her previous position, but it allowed her to spend more time with Emma and to find meaning in helping others achieve their dreams. Jake had become a dear friend to both of them. He fixed their car and refused payment, but more importantly, he had shown them both what real strength looked like. Emma adored him, and Rebecca found in him a gentle, steady presence that helped her rebuild her confidence in her life. 1 year after that rainy night, Rebecca stood in the parking lot of Jake's garage, watching Emma help him organize his tools. She had just signed the papers to start her own consulting firm. And the first person she wanted to tell was the man who had reminded her of her own worth when she had forgotten it completely. "Jake," she called out, "I have some news to share." He looked up from the engine he was working on, wiping his hands on a rag. "Good news, I hope." Rebecca smiled, the same bright expression that had slowly returned to her face over the past year. "The best news. I am starting my own business. A real one this time. Built on the right foundation." Jake grinned and gave her a warm hug. "I knew you would find your way back. You had everything you needed all along." Emma ran over and wrapped her arms around both of them. "Are we celebrating? Can we have ice cream?" Rebecca laughed, lifting her daughter into her arms. "Yes, sweetheart, we are definitely celebrating." As they walked toward Jake's truck to go get ice cream, Rebecca reflected on how much had changed since that terrible rainy night. She had lost her company, her house, and her savings. But Jake had been right about the most important thing. She still had Emma, and Emma still had her. Everything else had simply been rebuilt around that unshakable foundation of love. Sometimes, Rebecca thought, you have to lose everything to discover what you truly cannot live without. And sometimes it takes a stranger's kindness to remind you that love is the only wealth that really matters.